Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today, genetics. I don't have an exact date associated with when genetics was recorded. The saved files that I have associated with this were created by me before I went from Canberra, Australia, where I lived at the time, to Adelaide, Australia, where I did the final production of the CD, actually in the Insect Collective, for shout-outs back to previous Short Funk recordings. And when I recorded genetics, I didn't have a sense that this was actually going to be the most popular track on the Isle of the Apes CD. I was really very curious at the time because I recorded it and I thought it was going to be an incidental track. The National FM classical music station in Australia picked up this particular track and played it periodically. It was really very strange because I guess for whatever reason, the classical station liked to play experimental Australian music on occasion. And it was very curious because out of all the things that I recorded, I never would have thought that genetics would be like a defining track for the CD. The interesting thing with genetics is it defines this polymorphic audio method in kind of spoken word and playing together. And I think a lot of people are receptive to that. From my perspective, one of the things that I really feared about using the piano that I had was that it was very old and required a lot of quite eclectic stuff to keep it in tune. And it was frequently not really in tune. It's interesting using Logic Pro as I am currently for composition because they have an Afro-Cuban piano which is slightly out of tune, intentionally so, I think. So when I look back at my old piano in Australia in the shed, I reflect on the fact that actually it's now a defined instrument, like being slightly out of tune, slightly ragtime-esque, makes it a defined instrument. But at the time, the lack of precision in the tuning was something that irritated me. It was something that I didn't really want to put out any tracks that had too much piano because of this tuning issue. And with the early polymorphic sound development, I wasn't interested in something that's kind of auto-tune-esque associated with current vocal recordings. I wanted the underlying frequencies, if they were discordant or what have you, to still remain. So I didn't auto-tune, for want of a better term, this audio. I just allowed the underlying frequencies of the piano to come through. Genetics for me was just like a definitional thing, I guess, which is rather curious in talking about it in terms of the fact that I didn't think it was going to become a popular item on the recording. But anyway, without further ado, the things to listen for in genetics are some of the underlying kind of gravelly frequencies. The fact that I was obviously doing additional production on the polymorphic sound to make it slightly more, resonant and interesting. But this is just a definitional track. Genetics.
Polymorphic sound, as I see it, is just about genetics. This is about the genetics of sound, and in order to find good genetics, you need to look at very detailed genetic patterns in order to find some wonder, perhaps. Here, for example, we have a piano that comes from the Black Forest, I guess. It's a very old piano, so it has very old genetics. And the sound which is produced, most old pianos produce nasty sounds, they produce harsh sounds, but this piano produces warm sounds. So I've decided to take the sounds from this piano and extract the genetics for a polymorphic kind of thought audio experiment, which I'm going to play for you, or for your ears, more importantly, or for your ears, more importantly, or for your ears, more importantly, or for your ears, more importantly.
I hope you've enjoyed listening to Genetics and reflect perhaps that this was actually played to tens of thousands of folk that listen to the National Classical FM station in Australia. Well, about 15 years ago now, maybe 18 years ago, probably the longest point. But it continued to be played while I was in the US initially. And it probably continued to be played actually when I moved to the UK, because I got additional reports of it being played by various people. But Genetics is my most successful track recorded to date. And it's very curious reflecting back in a, kind of primordial Tom in a shed somewhere, just putting this thing together without thinking too heavily that it may actually reach tens of thousands of people. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.